Welcome back to another version of ARCA's podcast, Elevated Views. Today I'm sitting here with Ron Murphy and Jay Simpson, and we're going to be talking about innovations in roofing. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you doing today?
Good, really good. Thanks for having us, Kevin.
Doing fantastic, Kevin. Happy to be here.
Now, maybe for those people who don't know you as well as I do, can you give maybe a brief history? How long have you been involved in roofing, and what kind of roles have you played?
Starting next year will be my 47th year in the industry. Started off in 1977 on the roof. I'm a journeyman roofer. I was the first red seal roofer in Saskatchewan. I've been with my current company for 18 and a half years. So innovation, I've seen a lot.
It's funny, Ron references 1977. I was still a sparkle in my dad's eye at that point. So I've been in the industry a much shorter period of time, but it still seems like a long time at 18 years. Started with distribution, moved over to manufacturing. I've been with the manufacturer for 16 years, and I've kind of run the gauntlet within the manufacturing positions. It's been a whirlwind ever since.
So we were talking a little bit before about just the innovations in roofing, and maybe I'll pose this question to you, Ron. You've probably seen both innovations and new products come in. Do you think it's getting quicker, slower, and what changes have you really seen in the past 20 years?
Well, Kevin, that's a good question because there have been a lot of innovations. We're probably an industry that has a lot of innovation happening all the time. When you look back to where we started with tar kettles and hot asphalt and organic felts, we've come a long, long way. Jay's company manufactured those, and that was where their bread and butter was for many, many years. When I started on the tools, that's what we learned about. That's where we went to apprenticeship training to learn about. If you weren't doing hot tar roofing, you were banging on shingles. It's very common when we go to a social function, Jay and I indicate to who's at the party that we're in the roofing industry, and the next question is, oh, I need my garage shingled, so maybe you can help us with that. And we have to kind of say, no, we're on the other side of the business. We're the Walmart roof or the mall roof. So there's been a lot of innovations. The big one is, as we have an aging community in our business, it's to keep things easy for them to install as an innovation. And that innovation leans back the other way because we're also trying to encourage young people to come to the trade. And if we're not innovative in the way that we show them what this product can do and how it's put on, they're not going to have an interest in coming to work for us. So a lot of innovations need to be created for both sides of the workforce.
And I guess as Ron mentioned, Jay, from the manufacturing side, came in with BUR, built-up roofing. You have the felts, manufacture and distribute the asphalt. So you guys have seen a big shift as well too. One type of membrane going to modified bituminous membranes, but now you guys are expanding that as well too.
Absolutely. So for us, the innovation never stops. I mean, it's one of the things that we deal with every day. The thing that I've really noticed in the innovation is it's there to make the job cleaner and faster. There's other factors at play that slow that process down, like safety and all the other things that we all have to worry about in the jobs. But from a manufacturing standpoint, our entire goal is to make the job easier for the applicator. And the easier we can make it for them, the less problems you have on the far side of the job. We have seen a real shift from asphalt-based products into newer foam adhesives, spray adhesives, and now we're getting into TPO membranes. Single plies are really going to be probably the future of roofing, just because nobody wants to deal with the asphalt-based product anymore.
Well, that's a good point, Jay, because if we just looked at the media that happened yesterday from COP28, we're supposed to be phasing out fossil fuels in the next 30 years. Yeah. And I mean, one of the best adhesives that we've ever been able to use in the industry is asphalt. And it's basically a derivative up from fossil fuels. We need to go somewhere else to find other ways to install these roofs, to install these roofs. And I think that's a good point that you touched on, is single ply has been leading that charge for many years in the way that those products are put down. Low-rise foams, low VOC adhesives, and just moving that ball down the field more and more all the time.
I just want to touch on one thing you mentioned, making it easier for the installer. Now, is that making it easier and a cleaner job? Because I've also noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, it is getting quite a bit more technical in putting it down.
100%. Anytime you make something easier, you also make it more precise. And with precision, it means the applicator has to do it the right way in order to get the correct result. And that's one of the things that we struggle with sometimes, is as we innovate, sometimes we're innovating faster than we can teach.
That's a good point, for sure. Well, one thing I've noticed too, I think, and maybe Jay, you'll disagree, is that it almost now is an assembly line on the roof. Each individual has a certain role to play. It's kind of like building a car at Ford. You're the guy that puts the motor in. You're the guy that puts the doors on. There's those guys that are specialists in our roofing crews now that do that type of thing. And they do that part of the business because they're proficient at it, because they want to get it done once and they want to move on to the next proficiency, whatever it is on the roof that they're charged with doing. I think it's definitely back in the old days when we were roofing back in the 70s and 80s and we were putting 4-ply roofs on. If you got it wrong on 1 or 2, you still had 3 and 4 that you could get it right with, and then you could always hide it all with a flood coat of gravel and asphalt. Not that we did that, but it was there for the taking. With the type of systems that we're using and the type of systems that we're moving towards, those imperfections aren't able to be done anymore. That roof will suffer immediately if you're starting to cut corners.
And I see that on the association side where people say, well, geez, I never had ponding on my tar and gravel roof.
Yeah, you
but
did.
now you put a single ply membrane and I have little ponds everywhere. And it's like, just wasn't hidden with the
Right,
ballast
400
that's on
pounds
it.
of gravel just came off and we put a membrane on where that 400 pounds used to be. Yeah, there's a pond there now.
So where does that innovation really originate? Is it from the field that these new ideas are coming up with? Or how do you come up with some of these innovative ways? For example, I know, Ron, with Carlisle, you guys have the rapid lock system. That's very innovative. It's something that, who thought that you could put those kind of membranes together with something that has been around for 20 years, just not introduced into the industry?
Well, I think part of it is that you look to other industries and how they innovate. And Velcro, for example, industrial Velcro is used in many forms. The automotive industry, for one, to make attachments that are much easier than mechanical attachments by using the hook and loop method. So I think probably that innovation, I don't know the history on it at Carlisle. We rolled it out in 2018, but I'm sure the guys with the pocket protectors were working diligently a couple of years before that to get to that point where if it's good enough to hold car bumpers on, we should be able to get it to hold roofs on. So I think some of the innovations come from other industries. I think some of the innovations come from within. I think you only have to go to watch a roofing crew install a roof and know that they know better how to put your material on than we do. We can tell an architect how it's supposed to look when it's over, but the guy that puts it on and the way he does it may not be exactly the way it was laid out in roofing school, but it works for them and it allows them to continue to be productive. And with Jay's material, the material I represent, we give them a set of instructions so they know what they're expected to do. It's how they innovate about putting them on. The other thing you always have to remember in our business, and it's something that I always remember the instructor during my days at apprenticeship training saying, we're one of the only trades that has to start and finish what we do every day. When we open a roof up, we have to close it. Drywall guys can put up as much drywall as they are physically able before they get tired. Electricians can pull a whole bunch of cable and stop at the end of the day. If they don't have a roof above them for them to do that for, then we're not doing our job right. It comes from both sides. It's innovation on the roof while they're installing, and it's innovation within our organizations as we look at different ways to make it easier for them to put those products down. You would have to agree, eh?
I think Ron hit the nail on the head when he said we've created the ability for people to speak their minds and come up with different ideas. 30 years ago in roofing, it was get up on the roof, do the job that you're told to do, and keep your mouth shut and do it. The society as a whole has changed where we're encouraging people to come up with new ideas across the board. And as we've done that, we've managed to listen to people and find new ideas on how to apply things. And as they come up with these new ideas, now you've got teams of people in the background on R&D trying to figure out how to make that viable in an industrial setting.
Yeah,
And I think that's the key to
Yeah,
the whole thing, is just
absolutely.
allowing people to come up with different ideas and then giving them support to make sure that you can put it into place.
Yeah, we couldn't continue have been doing roofs the way we did them when I started in 1977. It was inevitable that that change would come. These changes, when you look at them and you look at things that you say, well, single-ply roofing, for example, is an innovation. Single-ply roofing's been around since the early 60s. Perhaps not in the form that it is now, with various types of membrane, right? Most of them were EPDM. Most of them were ballasted systems, inverted systems. We used to call them upside-down roofs in our day. The whole idea in those days was that that membrane would live on the substrate in a warm environment, not exposed to the elements like they are now. And those roofs were the first roofs that we seen going down with single ply membranes. And they did last. And I think it just led into other things. I mean, TPO membranes, if you probably drove a K car in the 80s, your dash was probably made out of TPO membranes. So another innovative in another industry that's made its way over to our side of the business. So we're always going to be continuing to look for ways to make it easier to put our products on, to make sure that those products last the test of time. I mean, one thing you've noticed in our business as manufacturers reps is our warranties now can extend into 15, 20, 25, and 30 years. Here at the ARCA, we're still at 15, but that's because we're confident with the innovations that we've made and the combination of products that we produce. We're vertical now. All those products are manufactured at Jay's company and mine in one of our facilities. So we have control over those products to allow us to, when we put them together, know that because we've tested them, accelerated tested them, that they're going to last.
And I think that's a very important part that not a lot of people understand is the amount of testing by third parties and by your internal research and development teams. There is a lot of testing that goes into any of those products before it makes it into the market. And that testing being in North America, south of the border, and up in Canada, two different testing regimes, but there is a lot to be done even before you can roll out something to your customers.
I suppose as manufacturers and manufacturers reps, the last thing we can do is make a bad egg because we're all going to stink when it opens. So we try not to do that. We're not infallible. We've all made mistakes with materials that we thought would be big hits that weren't. So I think we try and stay as close to the mainstream as we can. I think the biggest one for us at my company would have been definitely hook and loop. You guys would joke with me about the fact that every time I mentioned what it was, I got $5. But it's an amazing innovation. But there's tons of innovations out there. On Jay's side of the business, when I was repping for those products, mop one, torch one. You don't even see that very often in a specification anymore. It's all self-adhered, it's all glued assemblies, and that's just another innovation. So yeah, we're just going to continue to evolve. And somebody said it to me a while ago, is that manufacturers need to research. Manufacturers need to spend money on ways to make their products better so that they continue to perform. And that's innovation.
I think the key to the whole process is understanding the testing that goes in prior to anything ever seeing the light of day. The dollars spent on research and development, the time consumed by hundreds of individuals in the background make a better product. It's all governed by things like ASTM and FM, and the end consumer can know that when something hits the street, it's been tested 100 times over before it ever sees the light of day.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key for people to understand, because that's what means that when you've got a reputable manufacturer who's bringing something new to market, they've invested millions of dollars in that product already. If somebody's willing to invest that kind of money, then they better have a lot of faith in it when they take it to market.
Yeah, absolutely. And those systems have been tested probably close to home. So in Jay's case, wherever his plant would be, or mine, we're going to be working with roofers that we're comfortable with. We're going to bring them a new system and say, hey, we'd like you to put this on one of your buildings, and we'll help monitor that building. We'll come back, we'll do cut tests, we'll see what it looks like in the winter, we'll see what it looks like next summer, and we'll probably continue to do that for a year or two before we even decide to talk to the general industry about this is something that works out there. So if there is a failure, it's close to home, and we can pull it back in real quick.
I think in the long run, a lot of manufacturers reps are also very curious people. So even myself, when I get new product from our teams, you could come out to Chestermere, you can check out the outdoor rink roof, and it's got our product on it because I wanted to try it myself before I was ever willing to take it to market and sell it. And a lot of manufacturing reps think the same way. So they get their products out there, they play with it, they purposely try to destroy it just to see what'll happen. Yeah. And it happens every single day. And I think that's part of the fun time of the job too. We get to do this stuff in the background that a lot of people never see either. And that's the fun part.
So what would you think is the biggest challenge when you're bringing out these innovations? ICO has recently brought out a single ply membrane with your Innovi TPO.
Yep.
Most notably, ICO is known for its asphalt-based products, but now you're bringing something totally out of your wheelhouse. What kind of challenges does that present for you guys, bringing that to market, both from the roofer side and also from the consultant side?
I believe the biggest challenge we face is just general acceptance of not being a salesperson, but more being a technical person. And from a manufacturer standpoint, are you a used car salesman or are you there as a technical advisor for the project? And it's the biggest challenge we face every day. If people are willing to call us and ask us for advice and then disregard that advice in the long run, we get that scenario play out every single day. And a lot of it is because they still believe that we're part and parcel to being a salesperson. As a manufacturer, the biggest challenge you ever face is just general acceptance of your product coming into a new market.
Absolutely.
And when we released our TPO, we got really, really lucky with the timing on it. And we came in when there was a shortage of other manufacturers' products in the market. And because we had 50 or 60 years of historical experience in the market, people were willing to overlook certain question marks that they may have had if we were trying to release it in a normal period of time. But because there was already a shortage of market, people were like, okay, well, let's give it a try. And as soon as they give it a try, all of a sudden they realize, hey, these guys did do their research on this stuff. This is a good, functional product. And so as a manufacturer, the biggest challenge we face is just getting people over the hurdle of saying, hey, are they trying to sell me the next latest and greatest thing? What kind of commission are they going to make on this? What kind of bonus are they going to make on this sale? We get the question every single day. And the challenge, like I said earlier, is to make sure that they see you as a technical representative versus a sales representative. It's a mindset. It's something that the industry struggles with every day.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jay, and I think that's something that's important when you provide yourself as a contact for anybody that's going to consume those products, as they understand that you have the ability to support them technically. I think it's always been important when you deal with the specifying community that they know who the boots on the ground are. They know how to get a hold of a Jay or a Ron when they want to ask questions, and it's not a guy who's, as to Jay's point, making a commission and going to give you a snake oil type sales pitch as to why you should use it, that can support it with technical documents, can get you samples that you need, can take you possibly even to another roof if you wanted to do that and go up on that roof, can take you to your qualified applicators who can speak to the type of application that this is as an end result. So it's the whole package that you're able to give them. So brand recognition has a lot to do with it too. When you start talking about the companies that you represent, like Jay and myself, they've been around for a long time. And when we do have issues, perhaps because we rolled out a product too soon or something has happened that we weren't aware of when we did what we were doing with our due diligence, we're going to stand behind that product. We're going to say, you're right, something's wrong here. Let us come out and fix it. And that makes a big deal too.
Yeah, I think brand recognition is probably the biggest one. When you work for a manufacturer who's been in the business for 50, 60 years, you get a little bit of leeway. And you might not get that as a new manufacturer coming in with a brand new product. Every manufacturer has a manufacturing problem at some point. Look at Tesla's recalled 2 million cars. Every manufacturer has a problem at some point. It's how you deal with those problems that get you over the hurdle. And when you've got historical background with your customers that says, hey, these guys are here for the long run and they're going to look after us, that's the biggest hurdle you can get over as far as the challenge of a new product.
And Kevin, just so you know, from an innovative standpoint, we don't have any roofs yet that install themselves.
That is true, and hopefully we don't get that way.
No, I don't think so.
The contractors do like to do is they do like to provide that labor.
Absolutely.
But that brings up another good point, Ron. We've had discussions in the past that probably in the future you're not going to see a whole new selection of new membranes or of new materials. What's out right now is a pretty good basis, but you're going to see a lot of innovations with how they're installed. Self-adhered, cold applied, mechanically fastened, or with the rapid lock, for example. Are you still thinking that's the way it's going to go, that you're going to have just innovations to those roofings as you go along?
I think so. The thing is, at some point, you can only have so many types of membrane. When I was teaching back in the 80s, I read an article one time that said there was 365 different roof membranes available in the U.S. So there was a different type of membrane for every day of the year. However, those membranes haven't multiplied. There's probably still that many. It's just the way that we're putting them on is a little bit different. And I'm sure some of those have dropped off. We've been around long enough to see a lot of the successes that we've had with a little bit more mainstream materials like 2-ply SBS, EPDM, TPO, PVC, those type of materials. So that innovation hasn't really changed too much. You're going to continue to see these types of materials continue to be installed. One of the things we did see fall off, which I don't think anyone ever thought would happen, but it has is you don't see a kettle around very often anymore. In my day, you would drive around and you would smell that asphalt in the air in the summer, just about any corner of the city you went to. And us old roofers would say, well, that smells like money. Well, you don't see that anymore as much, but that's not that we're not still busy out there in the summer and the winter. We're just doing it differently now. We're doing it with products that are installed in a different form. Some of those products were being installed with asphalt, but they're not around and they're not as proficient as they used to be. And Jay touched on it earlier, there's a safety issue with that, right? And it's a very physical part of our business, how we were putting those roofs on and how we apply that material. I mean, there's nobody out there, I don't think, in high school that wants us to come to a high school function and say, yeah, you'll really have a ball swinging a 60-pound hot asphalt mop this summer if you choose to join one of our roofers for the summer for summer employment. However, you could be maybe on the other side running a robot welder while wearing a exoskeleton to lift that product up. How does that sound to you? So those are the innovations that are going to change. The materials themselves will continue to be installed. The ways that we install them are going to be different because of some of the concerns we have ourselves, environmentally friendly. Materials are something that people are more interested in. The spec community is definitely more interested in them. And if that's where the market wants to go, as manufacturers, we listen and we'll go there too.
And Jay, even with, dovetailing on what Ron said about that, some of the products that you guys have introduced have a lot better environmental footprint. They're a lot easier, and Ron was going right to where my next question was, even talking to those high school students or the people trying to get into the trade, showing them a clean installation, showing them the technologies and the equipment that you can use to support you while you're using it is getting a lot more traction, and it is getting people a lot more interested in the trade. Does that come into your mindset when you're thinking how we're going to roll these out and how we're going to innovate as well too?
100% it does. 100%. There's no real revolution in product coming in the foreseeable future. But as Ron mentioned, and as you mentioned, the way we're applying things is the revolution. That's all geared towards, number one, like I said previously, making the job cleaner, making the job faster, and making the job better. As much as we all love asphalt, specifically in my company, we loved asphalt for a number of years, and we still do. It's a tried, trusted, tested, true system.
Absolutely.
But we also understand that we have to be different in the future. Like I said, I don't think there's anything revolutionary coming as far as product development goes in the future. It's all going to be how we interact with the applicators and how the applicators perceive our product and the ease of how it's going to be applied in the future.
Yeah, that's going to be a big part of it moving forward. The other component in all of this is the guys that install our product.
Yeah.
And the fact that they are in business of installing our product. So you have to make the product acceptable to them to want to install as an option for them to make money. This is what they're in business for. So your product has to do a lot of things for them to continue to embrace it and to promote it as one of the columns maybe of their profitability in their business. So if we can make it easier for them to install, if we can make it easier for their older fellows to understand, because we don't want to get to the point where we're so technical with the installation of these products that the older guys just go, yeah, it's like my VCR, it flashes at me all day, all night at 12 o'clock, so I put a piece of tape over it to stop that. So we need to get them a little bit past that with what we're doing, and I think that's part of the innovation is we want to show them, instead of that very heavily laden VOC adhesive that they used to use, there's a better product with water-based adhesives that work just as well. Now there's limitations there too in the winter, and we have to make some accommodations for it, but we're moving towards that direction to make it easier for these materials to get installed, easier for them to install them and be profitable while they're doing it.
I think from our point, we have to be really, really cognitive of the fact that we still live in Canada.
Yeah.
And even the innovations in our products sometimes have limitations that within Canada we just can't work around. And we can't have a 3-month roofing season. We have to have a 12-month roofing season. So our biggest challenge as a manufacturer is making something that's going to be effective 12 months a year and still work for the purposes of what the market is trying to dictate that we should move to.
And that's a good point, Jay, because, talking about my background before, when we were working primarily with asphaltic products, it was very common for the bulk of us as roofers to be laid off around now because the weather changed and it just wasn't conducive to installing asphaltic products through December, January, March, and February. So most of us, there was always a core of guys that were left at the shop for work that came in and repair work that got. We were given our pink slip and we were told, you'll come back, start calling the office in March or April and we'll get you back to work. But that's been a big change with innovation, is that our trade now is a 12-month-a-year trade with stoppages for weather, but for the most part, it's a 12-month-a-year trade.
Yep.
It wasn't before.
And that's been one innovation. Do you think that's something that will be continued to be innovated on? Is just the workability throughout the year? Like you mentioned, it is a challenge living up in Canada and living in the far north, that you want to be able to install them. So is that something that you can see is on the whiteboard in R&D saying, okay, how can we make this work and how can we make it work better? I mean, Canada is smaller compared to the United States, but it is an innovation that affects a great area of our nation.
The biggest thing with it is it's not just Canada, but it's also the northern U.S., which is also a very large market in itself and becoming more and more important to most manufacturers. So it's no longer just about the Texas and the Florida markets. It's about Michigan's, the Indianapolis. All that comes into play. So it's a note on the whiteboard for R&D, like you said. And it's something that they have to be cognitive of, something they have to think of. It's not the first and foremost question that they have, but it's certainly part of the equation.
But that's a good point too, Jay, because if you look at the way that we have a selection of products available to us in those areas and here in Western Canada, when you're in a Texas or you're in a Florida, where you're going to see the roofing selection is going to be much more narrow because of their conditions that are down there too. They've got more intense heat, they've got more intense sunshine. They're going to select materials that we may not select up here as the go-to 90% of the time, only because of where they live. Because of where we live, we have a little bit of everything. And we have to be a little more flexible in what we do. One day it might be SBS, another day it might be TPO, the next day it might be EPDM with a rock over top of it. It really depends on what you need to do to get that job done. But I think the innovation that we're talking about, Kevin, is the stuff that we have them available. In that deck of cards that's the roofing industry right now, there's 52 cards that you can play. You're not stuck with 2 or 3 options that maybe you have to keep going to in a Texas because it's super hot for 9 months of the year down there, and it's something that you want a reflectivity situation as opposed to something that's a little more durable to the weather like we need to have up here.
Well, this has been outstanding listening and learning more about it. One item I like to close each podcast with is a lot of people also don't think of roofing as a community, and you've both been involved a long time. If someone were to come to you and say, oh, can you tell me about the roofing community, about the people in the roofing industry? What would you say, Jay?
It's salt of the earth. It's one of the things that drew me to the roofing community is no matter what you get, you're getting it at face value. It's something that, I've learned to live by through my 20 years in the industry. But no matter what, you're going to get good days, you're going to get bad days, you're going to get good answers from customers, you're going to get bad answers from customers. But no matter what, the answer is going to be truthful. To me, that's the community side of this business, is no matter what situation you're in, they're always going to tell you exactly how it is, and they're not going to beat around the bush. And to me, that means a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jay. And the other thing, too, is that's common for both Jay and myself is we both travel across the West. So that comment isn't just Alberta specific or Calgary specific. This is whether you're dealing in Regina or Winnipeg or wherever you happen to be. That community of people that you deal with is the type of people that Jay just described. We are a small part of the construction business. We're one of the toughest trades that we need to get people to work in. But those people that you work with have been around for a while. There's a reason they're around for a while. They like what they're doing. They like what the other people around them are doing, and they stick around. Like I said earlier, I've been at it for 46 years. I've raised 3 kids. I've lived in nice homes. I've driven nice cars, and this business has been able to do that for me.
The one thing that really sells me on the fact that this is a community is, obviously being part of the ARCA, I tend to get involved in the organization of golf tournaments and some of the Christmas functions and stuff. And it never ceases to amaze me, the generosity within this industry. We can show up for a golf tournament, and at the end of the day, we're donating $5,000 to a local charity. And that's just what people brought with them that day to give away.
Even our commitment at the end of the year that we've done with the zone here.
Yeah.
With making sure that the monies that are in the zone don't just stay here, that we take part of it and make someone's Christmas better. Yeah. And that's been something that's been going on for years, and hopefully it'll continue.
Well, and that's something I see as well, too. People ask me about the community, and you are part of that close-knit family that, like you say, you're truthful. Some days you're going to get a harsh answer, some days you're going to get a good answer, but it always is a truthful answer, and people stand behind each other.
Well, you know, I think the other thing to keep in mind too, and Jay and I are on different sides of the business, right? And we can compete for a job. And not all the time, but lots of times we have similar materials that we are offering out there. And I might lose one to Jay, and Jay might lose two to me. But at the end of the day, and even after this podcast, if we wanted to, we wouldn't have a problem going and having a beer.
Perfect. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I'm not happy with Ron's ratio of 2 to 1 there.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I hope you have a great day, and I'm sure everybody listening will enjoy the podcast and learn a couple things along the way.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us,
Yeah,
Kevin.
it was fun.